Hello and welcome to the review of Chapter 8 of the Dialogues. This chapter is titled The Territory of Conscious Awareness, which is a really big subject, and we're just going to do a little bit of it here today. So he refers us back to the image of a big circle with a little dot inside that we went through in the previous chapter. And of course, in reality, the big dot has no boundaries because the big dot is the infinite one. So there's nowhere and nothing that it isn't. But just for the sake of this example, we're going to use this again. And of course, that little dot is symbolic of you in your body-mind and the differentiated individual self that you have identified as being since you've been playing this earth game. So outside of the dot of your body, where there is no time, space, or particularity, where you will find your new reality. So in reality, this differentiated being that you have identified with has always been contained within the larger self. So this idea that I'm a differentiated being with an individual body mind and there's this spark of divinity within me is incorrect. Because in actuality, everything, every manifestation is contained within the larger one. It's not separate from the larger one and connected by this little umbilical cord. It's actually contained within the larger one. And within this larger one, no learning is necessary, but discovery will lead the way. So it's helpful to think of the idea that while I'm identifying as this smaller dot, I have access with my mind to the things that the smaller dot, the individualized self, has experienced, learned, and retained. But when I expand my awareness into the larger circle, I have access to so much more. And that's the shift that we're practicing in this chapter. In order to better understand this, concentrate on the idea that you have a natural ability or talent that was not learned. You have experienced something outside of the parameters of learning. It came from outside the dot of the body, from the wider circle of the self. So all of us have some ability that we did not achieve through learning, whether that's the ability to sing, or to understand music, athletic ability, the ability to learn quickly, the ability to hear language, the ability to get a visual connection and create art. Whatever that ability is, it was not learned. It was what they call a given. When you look at this ability, what is the source of your knowing how to do this? Where did this given come from? I mean, you could say, I inherited my ability to sing from my parent, but there are plenty of examples of people who can sing that don't have anyone ahead of them in their lives that are able to sing. And where did they get it from? And their parents and their parents. So you really can't say, I inherited this ability. What is it that takes your ability beyond that which can be learned? So you can learn the words of French, say, to the French language, but that connection with the language, the ability to use the accent just right, the ability to hear it, those abilities come from something that can't be learned. You can learn to a certain level, but there's an ability beyond what can be learned. So it's not the actual ability that's important here. but the broader view, the recognition of where that came from. The differentiated self abides within the larger self, as we just talked about on the previous slide. Look within and sink into that expansive space. So what I'm trying to point at here is the recognition that that smaller self that you've identified as is actually contained within the larger self, and you have access to the larger self. Now, access to the larger self is not outside of you. So that idea of little self expanding into the bigger area doesn't mean going outside of yourself, but the bigger area is actually within you. So the action is not, let's go beyond my differentiated self, but it's let's go within in order to find the access to this broader view. And this is actually what meditation is trying to encourage, that you sink into that expansive space, which is the larger you. And it's an inward motion, not inward to the brain, I'm in the mind, not inward to thoughts, but inward to that sense of awareness and that sense of beingness, and the expansiveness goes that direction. Verse 6, this idea will aid you too in your understanding of discovery, as your natural abilities or talents were discovered. And in that discovery, you realize that although you had not previously known that this talent or ability existed, it was there but awaiting your discovery. And if you look back to when you first discovered that you had an ability, you weren't born knowing you could write. You weren't born knowing that you could see things and represent them on paper better than other kids. You had to discover that. And so this whole idea of discovery replacing learning is the other thing we're trying to move toward in this chapter, because it's already there. In order to discover something, it already has to be there, and you have to find it, or it finds you, and you explore it and discover it. And this is a very exciting thing. The act of learning was something where here's the material, I want to learn this skill, I want to learn how to do this, I'm going to take this material in and hope that my brain retains it, and then I'm able to use it when I need it. That's learning. Discovery is based on the idea that the truth is already here. And just like kids that are going off with their sticks and their backpacks to explore in the woods, that's discovery. What's going to be in these woods? What are we going to find? That's adventure. What's already here that I'm unaware of? That's the discovery that we're moving into. It's a very exciting thing. So discoveries are a source of surprise and delight. Think of the kids in the woods. They'll cause you to laugh and be joyous as they are constantly revealed. And these discoveries are going to be not just about yourself, your differentiated self, but about life in general, about the awakening process, about the larger self, about truth and reality. All those discoveries are waiting for you. And these are gifts to be received, not learned. So there's nothing you can do to work to achieve them. It's not a reward for applying yourself. You're just going to discover them with that same kind of joy and zeal that those kids off to discover the woods are carrying. Discovery goes far beyond your natural talents, but it is a place from which to start building your awareness of what's available. So the whole reason for bringing up the talent is just as an example for you to have a practical application for something that has happened to you, and you've just been given something and you don't know why or where it came from. You already have an awareness of the source of unity beyond the body. It's your well-worn patterns that obstruct your view. So you've already touched that place, or you wouldn't still be doing this work. Verse 8, your mind, while it no longer wants to cling to known patterns, is confronted with them constantly. Thus your heart seems to battle with the supremacy of mind. Now, this verse is probably one that everyone can resonate to. While we've been told repeatedly, your ego's gone now, most of us are like, really? I'm not so sure about that, because my mind is just chattering on the way it always did, and I seem to always forget that I'm one with everything, and that I need to join everything and love everything, and that's certainly a pattern with which we're all familiar. But what has actually happened is that the programming that allowed you to have this differentiated experience of perceiving that you were separate is still there. Those are your mental patterns that are still there. And so now we're just trying to find a way to be in relationship with those patterns in a way that allows us to see truth beyond what we formerly thought was true. So what this is pointing to is you've got that stuff going on in your head all the time, but the heart really wants to wake up. It really wants to come out from behind the trap. And so it feels like there's a battle going on, like you as a doer are continuously having to apply yourself to remember what unity is. But what we're trying to show here is to show the mind, to bring the mind along with the fact that there's more than this. It's okay. You can let go of all of those thought patterns, because there's something else happening here. And the mind, I'll tell you right now, can only go so far, because the mind itself is a mental construct that was put in place in order to have the differentiated experience. So the mind is never going to be able to go with you into that big open space, at least not the part of the mind that's generating thoughts. So being aware of that, it's still not your enemy. You're not trying to get rid of it. You're not trying to do battle with it. And your heart is not doing battle with it. We're just trying to bring the mind along. In fact, that's really what this entire book is about, is trying to help the mind understand what's happening so that it can work in cooperation with what we're trying to do. So we're attempting to open the mind with the wisdom of the heart. So by actually bringing the mind along on the ride, we get some cooperation there. So expand your reach. Verse 12 offers some advice. Step through that doorway. Take the first step outside of the known reality of your conscious awareness, the learned reality of your separate consciousness, and into the realm of shared consciousness. So what this is really talking about is going beyond that little dot by going within to discover what's actually there. And what you will discover is, if you look at what you really are, it shines all by itself. That awareness that is beyond words and description, that sense of beingness, that connection with the one, shines by itself and doesn't need any thoughts. It doesn't need to be enhanced. It's got it. If you look at what you really are, without your individual identity, Your being shines as it is. Surrender into this essence. This joining is what you've been longing for. So the whole instruction of this chapter is to just take the time to go within, find that place of unity within, and become familiar with it. So thanks for joining me. I hope this was helpful, and I wish you every success. And I will see you in the next chapter.